All right, today we're going to talk about something huge, something that affects every single one of us, the U.S. debt crisis. And to get started, I want you to think about a comparison that, trust me, is going to make a surprising amount of sense.
You know, instead of buying a shiny new sports car, Uncle Sam is just blowing trillions of dollars on things like healthcare, defense, and sending out checks to retirees every month. But here's the thing. Unlike a personal crisis that, maybe a new hobby could solve, this one involves all of us. It's a massive spending problem that has just spiraled out of control into a debt so big it's hard to even wrap your head around.
Look at that number. Over $38 trillion. It's so big it almost feels fake, right? And that brings us to the single most important question facing the country today. Is there any way to actually fix this mess?
Well, let me just be completely upfront about this. After digging through all the data, it is crystal clear that the only real solutions we have left are going to be tough. They're going to be unpopular. And they are absolutely guaranteed to make millions of people angry. There are no easy answers here, folks.
So, before we jump into those ugly solutions, let's take a quick look at how in the world we got here. And it really all boils down to one simple idea.
A deficit. It's pretty simple. It's when you spend more money than you bring in, and the United States government, well, it's been doing that every single year since 2001. But here's the kicker. Lately, it's gotten so much worse. Since 2020, running trillion-dollar deficits has basically become our new national pastime.
So where is all this cash going? Well, to really get why we're bleeding money, you got to understand that all federal spending basically gets sorted into three big buckets.
Okay, so first up, and this is the biggest one, is mandatory spending. This stuff is locked in by law. We're talking about Social Security, Medicare. Think of it like your mortgage payment. You just have to pay it. The second bucket is discretionary spending. This is what Congress argues about every year, things like defense, education, all that. And finally, you've got net interest. This one's non-negotiable. It's the interest payment on that massive $38 trillion debt we've already racked up.
And here it is. This is the real gut punch. Just 5 things: Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, national defense, and the interest on the debt eat up nearly 70% of the entire federal budget. Everything else, everything, it's just crumbs by comparison.
And this is exactly why you hear a certain argument all the time, right? Just cut foreign aid. It sounds so simple, like an easy fix. But let's actually look at the numbers.
This chart really puts it in perspective. In 2024, the U.S. spent about $78 billion on foreign aid. Now that sounds like a ton of money, and it is, until you put it next to the $1.4 trillion we spent on Social Security. They're not even in the same universe.
So if we decided to cut every single penny of foreign aid, poof, it's gone. That money would cover Social Security payments for about 19 days. And then what? We'd be right back to square one, still borrowing money. It's like trying to lose weight by switching to a Diet Coke, but you're still eating a Big Mac for lunch. You're not touching the real problem.
And that forces us to face the Mount Everest of our budget problem, mandatory spending. We have to talk about the so-called untouchable giants, the 3 huge programs that together make up an incredible 44% of the entire budget. And here's where it gets really scary. Both of these giants are walking straight towards a cliff. See, they're paid for out of these things called trust funds, which are basically giant savings accounts. But we're pulling way more money out than we're putting in. And those accounts, well, they're projected to run completely dry. And when that happens, the law requires automatic, across-the-board benefit cuts. We're talking a 20% cut for Social Security and 11% cut for Medicare. Let me say that again. Doing nothing still ends in massive cuts.
Okay, so that's the problem. It's massive, it's scary, but it's not actually impossible to solve. So let's talk about some real, concrete things that could be done to fix these programs, and let's also be honest about why they're so politically explosive.
All right, for Social Security, there are 2 big ideas on the table. The first one has to do with how we pay for it. Right now, you only pay Social Security taxes on the first $170,000 you make. If we got rid of that cap and made high earners pay the tax on all of their income, that one move alone would close over 70% of the funding gap. The second idea is to tweak the benefits for the wealthiest retirees. Now, of course, both of these ideas are wildly unpopular with very powerful people and high-income voters, which is pretty much why they've never happened.
For Medicare, there are a few options. A small 1% tax hike could bring in over $1 trillion over a decade. But the most glaring issue? It's something called Medicare Advantage. It's the privatized version of Medicare, and the government is currently overpaying these private insurance companies by up to $127 billion a year. Just fixing that could save over $1 trillion. But it would mean going head-to-head with a giant insurance lobby. Now, that third giant, Medicaid, is a little different. It's set up as a partnership between the federal government and the states. So it can't technically go insolvent like Social Security or Medicare can. But that absolutely does not mean it doesn't have its own serious spending problem.
A huge part of the problem here is just shockingly simple. We need to crack down on improper payments. We're talking about basic data errors, paying people too much, and even outright fraud. Over 5% of all Medicaid spending falls into this bucket, which means tens of billions of dollars are just being wasted every single year.
So, we've seen some potential fixes, right? And each one comes with its own major political headache. So what happens if we just don't do any of them? What happens if we just keep kicking the can down the road and borrowing trillions? Well, that leads us to a pretty dark place.
As investors all over the world watch the U.S. borrow and borrow with no plan to stop, they're going to start getting nervous. And they'll start demanding higher interest rates to lend us money. And that higher rate doesn't just hit the government, it hits you directly. Your mortgage gets more expensive, your car loan gets more expensive, your credit card rates go up. It's like a slow-motion strangulation of the entire economy.
Look, the window to act here is shrinking. And the longer we wait, the fewer options we'll have and the more painful they're going to be. There are no perfect, painless solutions left. There are only trade-offs. There are only hard choices. So the real question we all have to ask ourselves is, what's the right choice? Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's that doing nothing isn't really an option at all.